Black individuals are food on the plate in the real world. And we're going to talk about some of the implications and some of the challenges for Black people that want to operate in the real world as if they're an island, as if they're a separate entity, as if they can just move around this particular planet. And there's not going to be any repercussions because they're not attached to a group. They're not attached to a particular group of people that can make sure that things are going well for them. They really don't have any attachments to any threads. And we're going to talk about some of the repercussions of that. And the reason why we want to bring this up is because there's a lot of programming to Black people through the media, through education systems, especially through a lot of social media, is that they can do everything by themselves. They don't need any help. They're this self-enclosed entity, and they're going to essentially have this idea of sovereignty based around, I don't have any connections or commitments to anybody else. And that's really not how the world works. And we're going to talk about the difference between Black people operating as individuals and groups of people operating as groups, and how it allows the group to be competitive because they have a competitive mentality around resources, and how the individuals are uncompetitive and have to deal with other the group is dishing out. So really quickly, this particular show is sponsored by it's sponsored by www.thehighestpaid.online. This is an options training academy for three people in our society. The person that doesn't like the fact that they don't make a certain amount of money per year and they don't see any opportunities to make any more money. The person that doesn't like the fact that there's a cap over their head, and regardless of how much money or how high the inflation rate is, they're not going to make any more money this year. So that's the person that gets a raise every March. And then no matter how much work they do after March, they're not going to see another raise until March. Also, for the person that doesn't like the fact that they got to spend so much time away from their family to make the money, right? So we've created a solution to that particular problem. And we're also going to talk about why this particular type of Options Academy and this solution is so needed in this particular environment that we're living in, because of some of the issues that a lot of Black people are experiencing, but not just Black people, but all people. But for this specific topic, we're talking about Black people. So I want to encourage you to look into that. The year is almost over. You need to kind of ask yourself, have I hit my financial goals for this year? And then what am I going to do if I haven't? Or what can I do to prepare myself for next year? Because we pretty much got 3 to 4 months before this year is over. Let's go ahead and get back to the content, right? Let me get that out of there. So what I want to do is I want to show you this particular article, okay? Do I want to show the article first? Let me go ahead and get in this. So we're talking about this particular article in California's largest racial bias case, right? So we have this article in California where Latino workers are accused of being abusive to Black workers, right? And what I want people to understand is that this is not just about individuals being abusive, right? It's about a group being abusive. So often we look at racism as it's just this individual thing. So there's not supposed to be this idea of systemic racism, right? It's supposed to be just this individualized thing, but it's because the average person doesn't really understand systems. They can argue that. Because I understand systems, there is no argument. So we look at a lot of scenarios. It's not just about individuals being abusive. It's about a group being abusive against individuals who they believe represent a group. And so here's this particular idea, and we're going to go back to it, that I can just go out in the world and people will judge me strictly on my talent is false, right? Does it sometimes work in individualized situations? Yes, but it's never worked for the whole group of Black people inside the United States. So what I'm supposed to do as a Black person is try to find the one place in America where people are just going to judge me based on my talent. So they're going to overlook my Blackness because that's a detriment, and just judge me on my talent. But my question is, why do they need to overlook that I'm Black? If there's nothing wrong with me being Black, why should somebody need to overlook it? But this is what I'm supposed to buy into. I just need to find the one place in America, whether it's Walla Walla, Washington, whether it's Des Moines, Iowa, whether it's whatever I need to go to figure out what people are just going to judge me on my talent and not associate me with their negative perceptions of the group that I belong to or that they perceive I belong to, is what I'm supposed to aspire to. And then if I'm successful in that area, then I'm supposed to promote to everybody that I finally made it. Why? Because I found the one place in America where I can go to where people just going to judge me on my talent and deal with me as an individual. And they're not going to have a negative perception of me because they think I belong to a negative group. Now, if you study, we don't give that programming to anybody else in America except Black folks. Let's go ahead and get into this article real quick. Let me get rid of this banner. So here's the headline. Inside California, largest race bias case. Latino workers are accused of abusing Black colleagues. So we got our our headlines and our headlines, we got these things highlighted, right? So we're talking about workplace discrimination, right? Working for these particular temp firms in the Inland Empire in Los Angeles. We got a guy that follows my channel. I think he's from San Bernardino. I wish he could have came on and give some context to this, but let me go ahead and blow this up. It was kind of like a impromptu live stream. So this particular employee is talking about that they said it in English, but they said it in Spanish all the time. So when they look you right in the eye and they call it the N-word to your face, that's immunizing. So in Moreno Valley, a black laborer, Mr. Watkins, described how a Latino coworker called to him and said, "Hey, monkey, yeah, you," and waved a banana in her hand. And then a group of women burst out laughing. So what we have in California, a rapid growth of Latino population with 19% in the United States and 40% of California of Latinos form the majority of many low-wage workplaces. And so what we've seen in California is that black people are being pushed out of California. They're being pushed out of a lot of the major cities, right? The Latino population is starting to increase. And what we're seeing with a lot of black people is they're having to leave California. So what we saw like in the 40s and the 50s and also in the 60s is black people left the South and went to Cali for jobs, right? And they were very heavy in Southern California. What we've seen pretty much over the past 10 to 15 years, but really the past 20 years, is Latinos have pushed black people out of Los Angeles, out of Southern California, made them had to move to the desert, Lancaster, Palmdale, made them in the Inland Empire, and a lot of them are now starting to move back down south. Why? Because as individuals, they're not competitive. They're not competitive against groups as individuals. So they're being out-competed. They're having resources taken from them. So what are they doing? They're just having to leave the area. So after 30, 40 years in California, many black people are leaving Cali with nothing to show for it, right? And we see that the population of Latinos in California is going back up. And that's not uncommon. Why? Because there was a time in this world where California, or that area we know called as California, was full of nothing but Latinos, right? So this not uncommon for Latinos to migrate back into this particular area because at one time, that's all that was out there anyway. So let's get back to it. So the two largest racial bias cases brought by the federal government of California, right, allege widespread abuse of hundreds of black employees at warehouses in the Inland Empire, which is the distribution hub for trade between U.S. and Asia. So for the state of California, but also pretty much for the West Coast, a lot of the items that come in from Asia go to the Inland Empire to get distributed out to the rest of the state, but also pretty much the West Coast. So black employees in interviews said a tone of racist insults and discriminatory treatment was mainly inflicted by Latino co-workers and supervisors who composed roughly 3/4 of the workforces at these facilities in Ontario and Moreno Valley. So they use this term called mayate, which is a type of beetle, and it's a Spanish slang for the N-word, was a common taunt according to interviews and court filings. So the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, I think that's the EEOC, alleged that supervisors at this global medical supplier called Cardinal Health and also at Ryder Integrated Logistics, along with their staffing firms, routinely ignored harassment in Spanish and English at their Inland Empire warehouses. What they did was they gave the black employees the hardest manual jobs, they denied them training and promotions, and they failed to take action despite dozens of complaints, according to these court filings in these interviews. So many of the black workers were hired through temp agencies. So when they complained to the managers, who were primarily white and Latino, they got retaliated to by disciplining them or firing them, right? This is based on information composed by or comprised by the EEOC. Then others felt forced to quit because intolerable working conditions created by a hostile work environment. So what we have is a scenario to where black people being hired by temp agencies to work in these particular facilities, they're seeing that this particular environment is unhealthy, it is hostile, and then many of them being forced to quit. And we're going to kind of talk about that. That's really the play. That's really the play, right? So they go to their managers, they go to the superiors, they say, hey, look, this is what's going on, right? And they either get disciplined or they get fired. Because, you know, when you work for these temp agencies, right, they don't care anything about you. You're an individual contractor, right? You work for a temp agency. Their attitude is you can take it or leave it. Why? Because we got a lot of other people that want these jobs because these are low-skilled, low-paying jobs. So this is one of the reasons why we keep communicating to people that you need to have some level of skill. Just having skill won't protect you. But when you have no group and you're also unskilled, you pretty much got to take whatever people going to give you. And if you find out what they're going to allow you to have is going to be little or nothing, right? Let's keep getting to the article. So because of this particular lawsuit, about 300 black workers are gaining compensation, some as much as $10,000s of dollars through this Inland Empire settlements. So Cardinal agreed to pay $1.5 million. Ryder and Kimco Staffing Services with supplied workers to Ryder, right, settle for about $1 million each. Okay. So this particular suit, we're going to talk about Cardinal Health and Apple One. And I know about Apple One because they operate nationwide. So since 2016, the EEOC said or alleged, right, that black workers were subjected to the N-word by coworkers and managers, including coworkers and managers multiple times a day, including NB word, lazy A N-word, you haven't done any work all day, and then look at those in-looking monkeys working like slaves like they should, right? So a photo taken by black workers showed a woman's restroom defaced with graffiti that the N-word stink up the aisles and black people stink. And then a man's restroom was defaced with N-killer, okay? And we know, out in the West Coast, they like to use that K real heavy, okay? So Apple One hired him to drive a cherry picker. This particular guy, his name is Leon Simmons, so he was a cherry picker. So Apple One was the temp agency, hired him to drive a cherry picker at Cardinal for $14 an hour, but he found that most black workers were largely kept off the vehicles. These jobs were given to less experienced Latino workers, even when licensed black workers were first in line, he said. So Simmons in his 50s was given a harder floor picker job for $12 an hour on his feet, loading boxes, headed for Kaiser Permanente hospitals. So temperatures inside the warehouse often rose past 90 degrees. So I think this is very unfortunate when you have a man in his 50s who's semi-skilled, but he does have a cherry picker ability. He's certified as a cherry picker, gets hired, but because they don't see the value in him, they shift him to another job. He can't complain why he's an independent contractor. He's not a highly skilled, highly valued employee, and he don't have a group that's representing his interest. So in his mid-50s, he has to deal with this type of stress, right? So this is why I try to communicate to people, you got to learn some type of skill, and I would encourage you to learn some type of skill that gives you some type of autonomy. Because one of the things that got me to understand is that you don't want to be older in this country and be unskilled, and you need somebody else to look out for you because you don't have a group that's going to represent your interests. It's not one person that's supposed to create the group. Everybody got to be involved in this, because when you look at this study, it's not just the men that's creating this hostile workplace, it's also the women. So this is because we don't really understand how these things work. We don't understand power dynamics. We think, well, just one group of the population is supposed to implement this stuff. The women also support the implementation. That's how they keep the continuity in it, right? But what we do on the internet is we blame each other. No winning team does that, but that's what we do, which is why we don't win. Let's keep going. So after 3 months of complaining, this guy Simmons was able to drive a cherry picker, but they kept his pay at $12 an hour. So even though he was doing a higher skilled job, they kept his pay at $12 an hour. And he said that was lower than that of non-black drivers. So he complained to Apple One and Cardinal managers. Nobody investigated. Nobody cared. His Latina, we talked about the women, not Latino, his Latina supervisor, right? So everybody that knows Spanish know what it means when you put that A as opposed to that O as a vowel at the end of it. One's masculine, one's feminine. Said if you're up here complaining, the orders are not getting picked. Okay. Now let's talk about this particular example. Now they go through all this, narrative about anti-racism in Latino communities. Cool. So at Ryder's warehouses, where assemblers packed and shipped medical supplies, black employees were subjected daily to such slurs as the N-word, Aunt Jemima, Negra Fea, which means ugly black woman, Cochina, which means pig, Cucaracha, which means cockroach, according to this particular lawsuit by the EEOC, right? Now, a former Ryder supervisor, Royce Yamaguchi, who was of Asian and Caucasian descent, said at Ryder, 90% of assembly leads were Latino, and they would pick Latino workers to be on their lines, excluding the black workers. Spanish was the dominant language in the warehouse. We're going to talk about that later. And Latinos were favored for promotions. Black workers were rarely given jobs that could lead to advancement, Yamaguchi said, and some complained to him about being called monkey and boy by Latino colleagues. Okay. So Watkins, this particular person, sought to move from temporary to permanent status. My supervisors had me training the new employees, and I would see the new Hispanic temps be promoted to permanent. They didn't even consider me. So this guy's being used to train people so they can move from temp to permanent. He's being stuck in the temp space, which means also he gets less money, and also he'll never be available to get any kind of benefits, right? But this is what happens when you operate as an individual, hoping that you're going to find the one place in America that you've been sold. Well, you know, I went to Iowa and they didn't care that I was black. The question is, why should they care that you're black? But what we've been taught is that find a place where they're not going to care that you're black. Why should they care? So you're already coming in the game program that being black, something's wrong with you. You got to look for the white people or the Latino people or the Asian people where they got such a big heart, they're going to overlook the fact that you have this issue. Okay, let's keep going. So McCorkle, right, Miss Regina McCorkle, complained to 6 Ryder and chemical managers, all Latinos, about bias and slurs. One dismissed the behavior as part of the culture. So after about a year, Ryder promoted McCorkle to a quality auditor job, but name calling escalated. Latinos seemed insulted that a black woman was checking their work, right? I thought the only person that had issues with black women being in position was black men, but I guess that's not real life. That's just the internet. So when days are complaining yet again, McCorkle was fired for what Ryder said were performance problems. No one ever told me about a mistake. So she was fired for performance issues right after she complained. But from her understanding, nobody ever informed me that I was making mistakes on the job. So she was the first to file the EEOC charge. And then about within a month of this particular lawsuit, 115 other black workers came forward with similar allegations. So another person that had these allegations was Miss Leilani Turner, a 52-year-old former healthcare nurse. In Ryder's parking lot, she and other black workers found their vehicles vandalized. There would be milkshake all over our cars, Miss Turner said. Our tires were flat. There would be urine on our tires. Okay. So now their cars are being vandalized while they at work. Okay. At 5 warehouses where Turner has worked for over the years, 80% of workers were Hispanics, with a small portion of Caucasians and black people. The Hispanics stick together. They make sure that people get ahead. So I'm going to repeat that again. At 5 warehouses where Turner has worked for over the years, 80% of workers were Hispanics, with a small portion of Caucasians and black people. The Hispanics stick together. They make sure that people get ahead, right? So when you have a bunch of people that don't understand that we're involved in economic warfare, they don't understand that we're competing for resources, they don't understand what's actually going on, they buy into these false narratives put out by entertainers who don't live a real life, they live an entertainment life, right? They're platformed by Anglo-Saxons, so they got to say what Anglo-Saxons tell them to do because that's who platforms them. But they're going to program you that all you got to do is find the one place in the country or the one place in the world where they don't have an issue with you being black, as if that should even be an issue. That's like me saying, you know how outrageous it would be? It's like, let me find the one place in the world where they won't have an issue with me being a male biologically. Because I live in a world where me being a male biologically is there's a bias against that. So let me find the one place in the world where they don't have an issue with being me be a biological male. So because I was born with a genome that goes back over 1 million years, and because of this particular time period in the world, right, I need to find the one place in the country where people are not going to have an issue with that, right? Even though I got some of the oldest genomes in the history of the world. So this is what happens, right? This is what happens. So we have a lot of non-competitive people to where they deal with this looking for this one scenario, and they got every excuse in the world. And we're going to kind of talk about that because somebody just commented something else, but this is what I say. I don't have time for non-competitive people. I only have time for people that want to do something competitive. If you don't want to compete, that's cool. Just get out of the way and let the competitive people compete. And you just stand on the sidelines, because I'm not in the sidelines. I'm in the game. And let's go ahead and break these points down real quick, and we're going to get up on out of here. Ray Gunn, appreciate the $2, man. So here's what we're talking about. So the idea that I'm an individual, I can go out in the world and people just judge me on my talent is false. It's never existed and never will exist, right? It's never existed and never will exist. But people are made to believe this. And because black people are programmed in America to hate other black people, we're programmed to judge black people harsher than we judge anybody else. We believe this type of stuff. So let me ask you a question. I live in the Southwest. I live in an area that's primarily Mexican American or Mexican, right? We got Mexicans that are in cartels that cut the heads off of other Mexican people, hang them up from highways. We got Mexicans that's in cartels that go inside people's house, and not only do they kill the mother, they kill the man, they kill the woman, and they kill the children, cut their heads off too. We got Mexicans that go on video camera with chainsaws and cut the heads off other Mexicans. We got Mexicans that have totally destabilized Mexico. We got Mexicans that have totally destabilized Mexico to where whole sections of Mexico is run by drug cartels. Okay? We got Mexicans that have come to the United States. They've joined criminal street gangs. They've joined criminal prison gangs. They've joined organized crime prison gangs. And they've been doing this for decades inside the United States. You won't find Mexicans that say, you know what? I don't deal with Mexicans because of what Mexicans have done. They come to the United States and they get with other Mexicans to build power and to get resources. Because they know the only way I'm going to have power and resources in this world is to get with some other Mexicans. Irregardless of their class, you got low-class Mexicans that do it, low-income Mexicans that do it. You got middle-income Mexicans that do it, and you got wealthy Mexicans that do it, but they all do it. So they don't trip on the fact that it's Mexicans doing the wrong thing because that's not the group that they running with. They're not in cartels. I've known Mexicans that was getting money, that come from money. I knew a Mexican that used to be a media buyer. He spent $20,000 on Bing ads. Most Mexicans don't have $20,000. That's living in Mexico. They couldn't find $20,000 to save their life, right? And he deals with other Mexicans. He don't care that them Mexicans is selling all those drugs and they doing human trafficking. That's not his group. He comes from Mexicans that got money, they own things, they got stuff going for themselves. So he lives in Mexico City and he does his thing with other Mexicans that got money in Mexico City. They go to private schools, they go to university, and they live their life inside their bubble. But we've conditioned because part of being black in America is hating other black people. So as soon as a black person does something wrong, that's a reflection on all black people. That means I can't deal with black folks no more. But you know, you don't see Mexicans doing that. And some of the stuff that has come out of Mexico and coming to the United States has been very detrimental to the United States. You won't find a Mexican know what to say, but I don't deal with Mexicans. I only deal with white folks. I don't deal with Mexicans. I only deal with black people. Do you got Mexicans from black neighborhoods? Yeah, they do. But they still deal with their people. They just from a black neighborhood. Right? So that's what you got to understand. So like I said, I don't deal with black people that think like that because what this person is, they're non-competitive because no one in this country is competitive by themselves. Nobody. That's not how this country is built. There's not one person in this country that's competitive. So if you're a black person all by yourself, you're not competitive. And I'm here to compete. I'm not here to be non-competitive. So then we don't have nothing to talk about. Peace to you. I hope everything work out for you. I'm here to build competitive groups. That's the only thing I care about, right? So that's the first thing. This idea that I'm an individual, I can go out in the world and people are going to judge me just on my talent is false. That's not how the world really works. But if I'm not a competitive person, I will believe any lie that's going to excuse my lack of competitiveness. And you're not competitive by yourself. I built a group of people that can be competitive in the markets. We're not Bear Stearns when they're gone. We're not JP Morgan. We're not Goldman Sachs, but we are competitive in the market. I didn't just do this by myself because I'm nobody by myself, right? But because I came up playing team sports, I know that I didn't come up playing individualized sports, right? So I got a different mentality and I know how the world really works. So let's get into the next one. So this idea that I'm just going to be governed by my efforts. If I go to school, get enough education, everything's going to just work out. I go get enough, skills, everything's just going to work out because people are going to just judge me by the talent I bring to the table. And a lot of conservative entertainers like to use a sports comparison. When you see in sports, black people are promoted because they've shown an ability to do the job the best. That's ahistorical. You're talking to somebody that really plays sports and loves sports. So there was a time in this country where black people were not allowed to play middle linebacker. Why? Because they weren't supposed to be intelligent enough. So Willie Lanier had to prove that black people on the professional level could play middle linebacker. But for years they couldn't. They could play D lineman, could play DB, but couldn't play middle linebacker. Why? Because a middle linebacker made all the calls on the defense. And a black person, but most importantly, a black man was not supposed to be intelligent enough to be able to handle that type of responsibility. Then it was blacks cannot play quarterback because it's a leadership position. So we don't believe blacks have the leadership position ability. Most importantly, black men don't have the leadership ability. So we don't let them play quarterback. So they would be successful quarterbacks in high school. Then when you get recruited to go to college, they come in your house and say, well, you know, we think you'll work at DB. We'll think you'll work real well at wide receiver. If you look at Lamar Jackson, the state of Florida has been producing that archetype of player for 20 years. That's the kind of player we put out. Athletic, lean, aggressive. We've been putting that player out for 25 years. But he was fortunate enough to be allowed to play quarterback in college. Because most guys that fit that archetype, they get recruited as an athlete. And then they go to college and they change their position on them. Seen it happen a million times. I'm from the state of Florida. Lamar Jackson's not the first type of guy we put out like that. We've been putting guys out like that for 20 years, but they was made to change their position once they went to college. Because we don't believe that blacks can play quarterback. So it got nothing to do with if you just show you got talent. It has to do with the people that make decisions inside that system and whether or not they're willing to, and do you have a group to enforce what you want to do? We don't have a group to where we can force these schools to play these black young men at quarterback. So they got to go to the school and do whatever them people tell them to do. Where if you go to the Mannings, either you're going to do what the Mannings want you to do, or they're going to pull their child out of that school. He's going to go to another school. Why? Because the Mannings are a group. They're a family. You can't just treat a Manning the way you want to treat them. And I told people from the gate, if that Manning that's at Texas, if he don't start off in a certain amount of time, they're going to pull him out of that school and send him somewhere else. Why? Because the Mannings are a group. They're not just dealing with one young man and his mama. You dealing with that whole family. The same way when they got ready to draft, what's his name, into the NFL, they told San Diego not to draft him so he could go to the Giants. Why? Because they wanted him at a bigger media market. So this type of stuff people don't talk about, but I know because I actually studied the game. Right? So don't believe these conservative entertainers when they try to use sports as an example of, well, you know, if you just got talent, everything will work out. And that's an example of if you just bring talent to the table, people will overlook the fact that you black. Let's get to the next point. The world is controlled by groups, and these groups are competing for resources, or they're not competing for resources. The world is controlled by groups of people. The world's not controlled by individuals. Individuals are nothing in this world. They don't exist. The world is controlled by groups, and those groups are competing for resources, or they're not competing for resources, and they're hoping that another group gives them access to resources. That's why I don't want to listen to no non-competitive people, but especially non-competitive men. We don't have anything to talk about. No disrespect to you. I hope everything works out for you, but there's nothing to talk about because I'm only interested in building groups that are competing for resources, because the only way to ensure that your grandchildren are going to have something is if you go compete for resources, or if you hope that another group likes you enough the way they'll give you access to their resources. Right? That's the issue. So that's what I want people to understand. The world is controlled by groups. And we see this with this employment situation. The majority of people, almost 40%, which is almost half the population of the state of California, is Mexican, Latin America. In these low-paying income jobs, right, you're primarily seeing Latinos. What are they trying to do? They're trying to get everybody else off these jobs. Why? Because I want my group to get access to these jobs. Right? I know 20 other Latinos that would benefit from working inside, so they ain't got to pick cabbage and pick strawberries no more. So I want to make the environment so negative that you leave and I can bring my folks in, because jobs are a resource. So you as a black person, you going into this temp agency as an individual, right? Well, they just going to see my talent, and I don't deal with no other black people because I had bad experiences with black folks. But a Mexican that had to leave the Sinaloa Valley because the Sinaloa cartel killed a member of his family and ran him out of the Sinaloa Valley. Soon as he landed in Houston, you know what he do? He link up with some more Mexicans. That's the first thing he do when he landed in Houston. He link up with some more Mexicans. Even though he was trafficked over here by Mexicans, they broke his neck. And what I mean they broke his neck was they charged him a lot of money to get over here. He barely made it. He got over here by the skin of his teeth. He know about the Mexicans that put the people inside that semi-car and let them die because they overheated. And the first thing he do when he land in Houston is he link up with some more Mexicans. Why? Because he a Mexican. And that's what he gonna deal with, Mexicans. And when he get on his feet, he's still gonna deal with some Mexicans. Why? Because he a Mexican. Feel me? So that's what he understands. I'm a member of a group, and I gotta get control with my group. I don't have no controllers as no one person. So even though he might like screw, and he might like syrup, and he might like spinners, at the end of the day, he's still gonna link up with some Mexicans. He's just gonna hang out with y'all for a little bit. At the end of the day, he's gonna go back with some more Mexicans. Why? Because he's a Mexican, right? So jobs are a resource. So what the Latinos are doing is making sure the jobs are uncomfortable so that the black people leave, they can bring more Latinos in. Oldest trick in the book. Oldest trick in the book. And not only do they do that in this environment, I'm from Orlando, Florida. They do the same thing out there. They do the same thing out there. You got whole sections of the city of Orlando that's controlled by Latinos. They control apartment complexes. If you go in there and you ask to see an apartment, they'll start speaking to you in Spanish. Why? Because they don't want you living here. The fixed income apartments in their area, ain't nowhere in the world you're going to get in there. You put an application in, your application going to get lost. Why? Because these fixed income apartments is for us. They're not for y'all. So they operate as a group. They're not operating as no individual. Do they have issues with each other? Yeah. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans in Orlando. Puerto Rico has a lot of issues. And when they come over here, you know what they deal with? Puerto Ricans. They don't come over here and be like, well, because of my experiences in Puerto Rico, I don't deal with Puerto Ricans once I land in Florida. As soon as they land in Poinciana, as soon as they land in East Orlando, you know what they deal with? Puerto Ricans. You know who they don't want to deal with? You. They ain't running from nothing. Feel me? So that's what we don't understand. So with the jobs being a resource, which they are, the Latinos will say, we're going to make this environment so uncomfortable that these black people get out of here. We can bring more Latinos in because we want to control this resource. Because what happened is over time, they'll move their people up into management, which means what? They'll lock that whole thing down vertically. It'll be Latinos from the management level to the supervisor level to the entry level. They got it all locked up. Now they control this. This is theirs. That's how competitive groups think. Competitive groups don't think, oh man, I had an issue with members of my group, man, I'm just gonna fall out. That's called transforming. Now you can quit, you can retire, but we don't transform. But that's where I'm from. That's the structure. Ain't no transforming, dog. We don't do that. My name not Optimus Prime or Megatron. I don't transform. It ain't in me to do that. So how's one of the ways in which they do that? Language. Latinos organize around Espanol, and they use it to shield themselves. And this, once they find out that you speak Spanish, they get nervous. Why? Because they know they can't say what they want to say around you. So I see this in East Orlando. I see this in Miami. You see this in Houston. You see this on the West Coast. You see this all over the country now because of how many Latinos we got over here. They organize around their language. Even though they speak different dialects, they use that language as a shield. They use it as a shield, and they use that. They started telling people in Miami in the 80s, if you wanted certain jobs, you had to be bilingual. Why? Because they was controlling the job. So you an American, born and raised in the state of Florida, you try to get a certain job in Miami, they tell you, well, you're not bilingual, you're not a good candidate for the job. What? That's how they doing it. Then when you try to deal with them, they start speaking to you in Spanish. Why? Because they don't want to deal with you. That's why when they find out that you know Spanish, they now got to switch up how they operate around you because they know what you're saying. Because I had an issue right before I came out here to Houston at somewhere with some Latinos, and I was about to really get into it with these dudes because where I'm from, we don't really deal with them because I'm from West Orlando. So there was one group of Latinos I dealt with in the city. The rest of them, I don't deal with them. Why? Because they're not from my section, right? So because I know the games that they play. That dude that used to play ball for Michigan State got killed in East Orlando. I don't know what you're doing over there. You over there all by yourself because you don't deal with black folks. And what happens because you ain't got no business being over there. Because they gonna do you a certain kind of way because you over there. Right? They gonna handle you different. That's how the game go. But him not being from Orlando, he don't know the politics. So he just moving around thinking everything's hunky-dory. It's not. It's a different type of situation. And God bless him. It's unfortunate what happened to him. Side note, no language supremacy in the U.S., even in government offices. There's no language supremacy inside the United States. So you can come to the U.S. and speak whatever language you want to speak. And even in government offices, they'll accommodate you. I came to Texas. I went to get my license. You know what I heard? We in the state office, and they're translating into Espanol for some people in there in a state office. So there's no language supremacy inside the United States. And there never has been. The only group in which language supremacy was imposed on was us. We were the only group that came over here and we're not allowed to speak the language we had when we came over here. Everybody else is allowed to come over here and speak their native language. And then everybody accommodates them. Even other black groups. If you live in South Florida, if you go to the hospital, somebody there speaks Haitian Creole. If you go to a lot of government offices in South Florida, somebody there speaks Haitian Creole. One of the reasons why Haitians have been able to get so much of a foothold in South Florida, but also in Central Florida now in the medical space, is because we got so many Haitians in these areas that only speak Haitian Creole. You need people to serve that particular market. So we're the only group that when we came over here, we had to speak whatever the language was, which was American Standard. There is no language supremacy inside the United States, even inside government offices. Right? So it allows this stuff to flourish where you can go somewhere in America and everybody inside there be speaking a different language, but you inside America. Right? But we've been told that, well, something's wrong with your culture. What's wrong with a culture that goes to another country and won't even learn the language of that country? What's wrong with that culture? But that's all right, though, because everybody accommodates it. So that's not seen as a negative. So this is how groups keep power. The way we keep our power amongst our group is we speak a language where other groups don't even understand what we're saying. So that they don't even understand how we're communicating. Right? And then we can also speak to other people that speak a variation of this language, but it still keeps people out. Because they're operating as a group. They're not operating as an individual. Let's get to the next one. Latinos will use their group to secure jobs, housing, and any other opportunities because businesses need their labor and will accommodate them. So what has happened in America over the past 25, 30 years, but really started happening with Reagan, even though nobody ain't going to talk about it, is they allow Latinos to come over here because they need their labor. Then they use their group to secure jobs. We've seen in this scenario, to secure housing and any other opportunity because businesses need their labor and will accommodate them. So because this society will accommodate Latinos and everything that comes with them, they allowed to build power as a group. They're not made to assimilate and conform to America. They're allowed to keep their Latino identity and still get opportunities provided to them. And then they aggregate around their group to make sure they keep those resources. And they're looking to push other people out. And they always go for the weakest group first, which is what? The people that don't have no group. So if I'm a bunch of Latinos working on the job and I see these black people coming in and I know that they're not moving as a group, they the first people we're going to push out. Because we can't deal with the Anglo-Saxons because we know they got a group. We can't deal with the Asians because we know they got a group. So who's the people that's just walking around here as individuals? The black people. So let's just get them out of here real fast and then we can fill up those numbers with our people. Now we got more numbers. So everybody moving strategic because they're not scared of the competition. We scared of the competition instead of just saying, you know what, I'm scared of these people. I don't want to deal with them. I'm just going to sit this one out. We got every reason in the world because I'm scared to say I'm scared. I don't want to deal with these folks because I'm worried that, you know, it might not go the way I want it to go. Right? So I got every reason in the world to just try to figure out what can I do to not have to deal with these people. 3, black people don't have an identity or a language to organize around. So because we don't have an identity or a language to organize around and everybody else does, they organize around their identity or their language. And then they, like I said, they go to get jobs, they go to get housing or any other opportunity based around their group. I don't have time to sit on the internet and argue about identity. I don't have time for that. I don't have that much time. I don't have time to sit around and have 5 years of discussions about what the language is because no other group does that. They got their identity, they got their language. You got Mexicans speaking the language of the colonizer. They don't care because that's their language and it allows them to create group power, right? Because Incas and Mayas didn't speak Espanol. That's the language of the people that colonized them. They don't care. It allows them to come into America and to create an insular group amongst themselves. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? I go places, I hear people speaking Chinese all the time. I go other places, I hear people speaking Vietnamese. I go other places, I hear people speaking, Hindu or Hindi. They got their own identity. They got their own language to organize around, right? And that's what they do. And they're not arguing over what the identity is, right? Because the goal is to get power and resources, not argue for 5 years of what the identity is going to be. Black Americans micro-segment into groups that don't seek to secure jobs, housing, or other opportunities. So we got a bunch of groups. Got the Black Greeks, right? That's a group. What jobs, housing, or other opportunities do they look to control as the Black Greeks? None. Don't have no control, right? They got their little micro group. But part of that micro group is not having that kind of control. It's getting resources from another group of people. That's the reason why they formed that group. No disrespect to them. I don't have an issue with them. I'm saying is that that's not a group that secure jobs, housing, or other opportunities. Because when I go to get a house, I don't have to go to that group. I'm going to another group of people to get housing, right? So we micro segment into groups, and it's not to cast a light on them. I'm just using them as an example. We segment into these groups that don't look to secure jobs. They don't look to secure housing, and they don't look to secure other opportunities. But we got all these different micro groups. There's a million different types of Black groups on the internet. What jobs are they looking to secure? What housing are they looking to secure? What opportunities are they looking to secure? What are they looking to secure? What areas are they looking to be competitive in? It's a bunch of people looking to escape. They're not looking to be competitive. They're looking to escape from everything, right? So that's an issue. So then you just get pushed all over the planet because you're not looking to be competitive. Eventually, you have to stand your ground and say, I'm going to go for mine. But if it ain't in you, it ain't in you. Then you need to support the people where it's in them. And you just get out of the way, play the sideline because you're a sideline person. That's cool. Everybody got to play a position in this. Black Americans operate as individuals and then have to keep their head down because they don't have a defense if something happens. So like I said, I'm trying to figure out where can I go in the country where they'll overlook the fact that I'm Black and I just keep my head down and I don't have a defense if something happens. Because if something happens, I don't have a group because I'm out here all by myself. Don't have a family to call on and I don't have a real group. I had a dude that was a member of this group that you joined in college. He from Tennessee. I'm from Florida. I'm a Florida native. He said to me, because me and him got into an argument, he told me if he see me, he going to do something to me. I said, you ain't going to do nothing to me in the state of Florida. You from Tennessee. I'm from Florida. You ain't going to do nothing to me. And if you do something to me, because I'm not bulletproof, I'm not Superman, and you go to jail for it, you ain't going to make it. Because the work I did with my group was that if I do go to jail, I'll be all right. Now, this was when I was a different person, but I did work the way if I do get incarcerated, which was most likely what was going to happen, I'll be all right. He didn't do that work. See what I'm saying? So a lot of times we're operating out of position because we don't have a group. Then we get into a bad situation. Our group can't support us because why? We don't have a group that's in a position of power in any area. So whatever you're doing, what group do you have that's part of that, that's in a position of power in that area? Because if you're just operating in that area as an individual and somebody takes something from you, nothing happens to that person. We have a lot of stories about very successful Black entrepreneurs in the late 1800s, early 1900s that had things taken from them. And because they didn't have a group around them, there was nothing they could do about it. This happened over and over and over and over and over again. Why? Because you don't have no group. So I did the work to make sure I was a part of a group. So what I was involved in, if somebody did something to me, something was going to happen to them. And I told him that. I said, I'm not even tripping on you because I know the work I did before I ever met you. Because I always know that this world is dominated by groups of people. I was just trying to figure out who the groups of people are. But you could have never sold to me that you can be just one person and just go out here and do what you want to do. That's not how the world works. One, that wasn't how I was raised because I couldn't do what I wanted to do growing up. And then two, that's not how the world really works. But this is what we buy into. I'm going to operate as an individual. Just keep my head down. And then if something happens to me, I don't have a defense. Then I got to hope that another group of people give me some type of redress, but it's a member of their group that did something wrong. So why are they going to punish a member of their group for me, right, when I'm not a member of their group? That rarely happens. It does happen every once in a while, but it rarely happens. But this is what we've been taught is going to work, right? So Many black people experience this. However, they think they should just take it. What we saw with these people in this particular job, I should just take it. I should just deal with it. Or they get invested to get that position, right? So I put so much work into this particular job, I should just take it. Or I don't know how to get a solution to the problem. I'm not a fan of, well, if you got an issue on the workplace, you should go to the EEOC. Is the EEOC there for you? Yeah. But the question is, what's your group? So let me give an example. Police officers are a member of a labor union. So when they have issues, their labor union represents them. They're not operating as individuals. If you have an issue with a police officer, you're an individual going against a bunch of people that's a member of a labor union. See why it's going to be difficult for you to win? So they're a group dealing with an individual. So what we don't understand is that group power is what runs the world. If you don't like one group, you need to join another one. But to think that you just going to do everything by yourself, many of us don't come from, to me, what I would call intact families. So you don't have a family to fall back on. That's your first group. Then once you get past that, you don't have a real group in the world that is trying to get resources. They're trying to get power. They're trying to get things that are actually going to be important in this world. And it's not just one part of the group that's doing it. They're both supporting each other and doing it. That's the goal of the group, is to get control of these things. We saw with this particular article, it wasn't just Latinos doing this. It was Latinas also doing it. Why? Because the goal is to get control for the group. Not to sit around here on YouTube and argue with what somebody else ain't doing. We're trying to get control of this job site in the real world, not on the internet. Because they want to control California. Why? Because they controlled California at one time. It was the European that pushed them out of California. They're being allowed back in, so they're trying to get their control back. That's why when you go to California, especially Southern California, almost every city got a Spanish last name. I'm sorry, almost every city got a Spanish name. I apologize. Go to the state of Florida. Why do you think so many cities in the state of Florida got Spanish names? Because that's who was there first. So they trying to get control over everything. You feel me? And so what we're trying to do is convince ourselves that I shouldn't have no control. I should just, find a place where they're not going to look down on me because I'm black. Well, why would that be an issue? And this is what I'm supposed to be consumed with. I don't find the one place in America, man, where they just let me live my life. They don't bother me because I'm black. That's supposed to be my ideal state. So when you have those type of mentalities and you get into these type of environments, because your particular group hasn't made this a concern, then when you get in these situations, you don't have any way of getting out of the situation. You got to hope that another group of people are going to give you some support. What if you was to go to the EEOC and they say, we looked at the information, you don't have a case. What you going to do? Just go back to work? So that's how it goes. So we're going to read these comments and we're going to get up on out of here because I say we ain't going to be here long. We already have 50 minutes. I ain't feel like I've been talking that long. Let me get this banner out of here real quick. We'll go through these comments. We're going to get up on out of here. Appreciate the super chats for everybody. Let me go ahead and read them out real quick. So Ray Gun, man, I appreciate the $2, man. Appreciate all the support. Appreciate that. Yeah, I saw that. I was going to include that, but it would have made the article too long. Yeah, so he did. He got a nice little piece of change out of that. We got to see if Tesla appeals the case. But he got a nice little piece of change out of that. And that'll probably happen down here too, because Tesla getting ready to put a plane in Austin. So Lena says, this is what Latinos are supposed to do. Give each other opportunity before anybody else. We don't practice this, so we think it's weird. It's not, we've been taught that you're not supposed to deal with black folks. Black people are the worst people in the world. But it's unusual that Mexicans come from a state that has been stabilized by other Mexicans. Mexicans destabilized Mexico. Now, did Anglo-Saxons play a role in it? Yeah, we shipped all the guns down there. But it's been Mexicans that have destabilized Mexico. It's been Mexicans that have mismanaged the government of Mexico. That don't have nothing to do with none but Mexicans. And Mexicans come over here, and all they had their whole life is problems with other Mexicans. And you know what the first thing they do when they get over here? They find some other Mexicans. That's the first thing they do. So Anthony Montgomery says, I got a friend who's had 7 jobs this year. He's caught up in surplus labor because he has no skills. Yeah, he need to try to figure something out. It's rough, especially as you get older. It's not going to get easier. It's only going to get rougher. It's only going to get rougher as you get older. Let me see something real quick. All right, so we got 185 viewers, 94 likes, man. I appreciate we get the likes up. So JLD say in the Marines, he found out how racist Hispanics were. I didn't see the Marine tab on your thing. All I seen was the kitten. Many fights broke out. Hispanics calling us the N-word. I feel you. So Miss Witt, this was in Los Angeles in the Inland Empire, where they do a lot of distribution for not only California, but I think pretty much the majority of the West Coast on items that are coming from China. So Geechee Dan says it's common practice in New Orleans for experienced black workers to be used to train inexperienced new white workers in less than 1 year become their boss. I feel you. So half of Trayson, you flying solo. All right, I hope that works out for you. You know what I'm saying? You food on the plate though, but you know, you might make it work. But you're going to be the only person out here solo. But this is the narrative of a lot of black folks. If that really is a black person typing that, is I'm just going to do everything by myself because I've lost things because of black people. Mexicans have lost their whole living because of other Mexicans. And they don't have the mentality when they come to the United States. I'm only going to deal with other Mexicans. Chinese people have lost everything because of other Chinese people. Communist Party has taken everything from them. And when they come to America, they still deal with other Chinese people. They're not saying, well, you know what, because the Communist Party, which is a Chinese organization, took everything from me. When I come to America, I'm only going to deal with non-Chinese people. That's their group. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, but like I said, this got nothing to do with black people. It has to do with socialization and conditioning. Something got to be wrong with black folks. And so if I can't, even if I haven't experienced something, I'm going to find something wrong with black people to justify my beliefs about black folks. That's how sophisticated this game is. Right? But big up to him. Hope it work out for him. So we're too busy arguing each other online about who is feminine and submissive and all this crap. Economics is the only thing that matters. Right. You know, the Chinese Communist Party killed over 1 million Chinese women or little girls. You will not get a Chinese woman to come to the United States and say, I don't deal with Chinese people. Like, so you got to realize how deep this it has to be something wrong with black people. So this gets programmed into black people at a very, very early age. Chinese Communist Party was responsible for a policy that probably killed over 1 million Chinese women. And you will not find a Chinese person to come to the United States and say, well, you know what? Because of what the Chinese people have done in China, I don't deal with Chinese people. They stick together like this in Houston, Texas. Got their own area to sit in and everything. Big up to GC. Yeah, keep competing. The quicker you get that in your head, in my opinion, the better it's off going to be for you. You got to compete for everything. Yeah, definitely. This same thing, JLD. Chicago and Houston, on the elite level, narcotics is controlled by Sinaloa. That's who controls it. You won't find Mexicans in, I got to leave Houston, man, because Mexicans making me look bad. Sinaloa control this city. Sinaloa is also responsible for a lot of the human trafficking in the city. Also responsible for a lot of the human trafficking in Atlanta. That's being controlled by Sinaloa. Chicago, Sinaloa City. You won't find no Mexicans talking down on Mexican because of that. But that ain't no but a bunch of Mexicans. Flores brothers, Mexicans. Right? Flooded the streets. It ain't going to happen. Right? We the only one. Like I say, it ain't got nothing to do with black people and what they do. It got to do with I've been programmed to believe there's something wrong with black people. So now I got to justify that. It is what it is. You know, once you realize the program and you see straight through it. MS-13, yeah, they real big in VA too and be killing people. They real big in VA. Real big in VA. Because I was in VA somewhere. Somebody told me you'd be to watch out for MS-13 because I was at a hotel. You know, I was just walking around trying to get some food. So like, man, you got to be careful about MS-13 because you're a black dude walking around out here and they don't like black people like that. Right? But you ain't going to have nobody. I mean, you know, I don't hang with other Mexicans because El Salvadorians because of MS-13. Right? And the femicide in El Salvador is at an elite level. And you won't get no El Salvadorians to say, I don't deal with El Salvadorians because of femicide in El Salvador. It's at an elite level. All I got to do is go look it up. Hey, Styles, appreciate the 199. Antonio Brown. Yeah, you know, what's his name was a quarterback too. Anquan Bolden. He won state with Pahokee. And when he went to Florida State, they moved him to wide receiver so Chris Ricks could play quarterback. Chris Ricks was a terrible quarterback. I liked him because he made it easy for Miami to beat them. Chris Ricks was a terrible quarterback for Florida State. But they told Bolden, we want you to play wide receiver, even though he was a state-winning quarterback at Pahokee. Miss G, I appreciate you coming through. But JLD, Mexicans do work hard. I can't take them from them. They do work hard. But there's also a lot of criminal-minded Mexicans, right? That's just a reality. It's also a lot of Mexicans in Mexico that have no desire to make Mexico into a functioning state. They just want to keep taking financial aid from the United States because they live an elite lifestyle from that financial aid, and they don't care if the majority of Mexico's poor, right? So it's all different kinds of Mexicans. Because one thing I can say about out here in Texas, the Mexicans out here have been very nice. I ain't had no issues with them. They've been real social because they used to being around black. It ain't like how it is on the West Coast, in my opinion, right? But it's all kinds of Mexicans. So a lot of them do work really, really hard, especially in agriculture. But what we don't see is Mexicans saying, because of the issues I had in Mexico, which is the reason why I'm in America, I don't deal with Mexicans. First thing they do when they land here is go find some Mexicans to go deal with because they know that's how I'm going to have everything. Then they start buying real estate. They start getting jobs. They start trying to figure out how we going to move up as Mexicans. You do got some Mexicans from black neighborhoods, but that's few and far in between. That's not the majority of them. That ain't 99% of them, in my opinion. Yeah. But see, this is the thing, each sense. The people that believe it, I say, if you really believe that, like, go to Haiti and become successful. Right? Anybody that says, I believe in free market capitalism, okay, go to the Congo and go make you some money. You might last 30 days. And people will kill you over there because they believe in free market capitalism too, which means if I can kill you to get it, that's what I'm going to do. These people don't believe in what they say they believe in. They're what we call, they're doing it in a bubble. They don't know what that really looks like. They believe in doing it in a bubble. I believe in free market capitalism inside the United States. Why, if something go wrong, I can call the police. I can go to the courts and get my contracts enforced. Go to Haiti or go to Sinaloa and do business. If you believe in free market capitalism, go to Sinaloa and do business and find out that what happens when you do something in that area and you ain't been given permission, what's going to happen to you? Because it's just a free market if you say so. Yeah, definitely. That's been going on for years, AKW beats. For years. You got whole areas of Miami to where if you don't speak Spanish, you can't get nothing done. That's been going on for years. And Cubans also organize around their language. They use their language as a barrier to keep other people out. Right? They organize around that language. So that's what people don't understand. I'm from Florida. I know how the game is played. So Credit Suisse Lucius, appreciate you coming through. The wait list for Section 8 apartments open. All the folks from certain races tell all their friends before it gets posted. Definitely. And that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to get their friends the word. Right? Someone from the inside gives me a heads up to come get in the application lottery. Definitely. Yeah, they do. I don't like the fact that anytime you call customer service, they're asking you if you speak Spanish, click this button. These are American-based companies. Why would it be an issue? But like I said, we're catering to this labor pool. And it's irregardless of political affiliation. Businesses want those people over here. The politicians can't change that. Right? They can't change it. They just talk that little talk. They can't change it because the businesses want them over here. Like I said, it started with Reagan. Reagan was the first person to do amnesty for Latinos that coming from south of the border, right? Started with Reagan, who's supposed to be this, this centerpiece of conservatism. Yeah, definitely. But Credit Solution, they don't have to learn English. If the whole country is going to accommodate the fact that you don't understand English, why would I learn it? And see, the thing is, when you don't speak English fluently, then you go home and your whole world is Espanol or another language. You never really learn English. But I don't have to. I'm able to get a job because I asked somebody, if a person don't speak English, how do they interview for the job? You know what they do? They allow somebody else to interview them in their own language. So, I used to live in Orlando. There's a lot of Brazilians in West Orlando now. You go to Walmart, a lot of them people are not speak fluent in English. You know what they do? They interview them in Portuguese. That's how much they want them on the job. And then as they get more and more of them, you get a few that's bilingual. They get into the supervisor position. They're going to get into the manager position, and then they're going to open up that floodgate. What we do, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, we get in the room, and then we try to close the door on everybody. Because we so worried that I need people to overlook the fact that I'm black. So I'm so worried that somebody else going to remind them that I'm black. I can't have no other black people in this room. When they get in the room, they try to open up the door so as many as people can come in as possible. They just look at it different. Yeah, so we just talked about this. Credit Solution that says black people always going to be the only token Negro in the office instead of bringing on the black scene. Definitely, because I want to be the special snowflake. Right? I want to be the only Negro over here. I'm the Negro that gets it, regardless of my political affiliation. On the liberal or the conservative side, I'm the one that finally gets it. So that's the game I want to play. So if I'm not special, if it's a bunch of us over here, I got to be the only one. I'm the one that gets it. I'm the one that speaks the truth, yada, 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 to white folks. You remember Django, where he was so impressed by Django because Django could communicate and could read, and Django was the special one. That's how Negroes play. That's how they feel they're going to have something in this world to play these kind of games with these people. Credit Solution, appreciate the $5. Yeah, definitely. That is a good movie. I tell people that all the time when they try to say that black people started gangs. BS. My people from Chicago, it was white gangs in Chicago way before any black gang got started. Because black people moved to Chicago. There was already gangs there. Because Daley was the mayor of Chicago, was a gang member at one time. It might have still been a gang member even when he was mayor of Chicago. But see, we don't want to talk about that type of stuff. Right? Chicago gang related, been gang related. That ain't never going to change. K Business Podcast, appreciate it, man. Yeah, definitely. Texas, pretty much the whole Southwest was Mexico. If we actually look at the old maps of how big Mexico actually was, pretty much the whole Southwest is Mexico. It's the United States that came and took that land from the Mexican government, which was too weak to fight them militarily, right? So that's really how they did it. So that's why if you go to the West Coast, all those Southern California cities all got Spanish names, right? Because that all was Mexico at one time. It was all Mexico. Mexico was extremely big, and the United States took all of that from them and left them with what they got now. AK Beats, appreciate the $5. Mr. Theodore, appreciate the $5. Miss Zivamuya, if I pronounced that right, appreciate the $2. That's even more than $2 because it's pounds. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, but that's what they teach us, GC. So we're taught that one black person represents every black person while promoting individuality. So really, collectivism is one person represents the whole group. But we're taught as black people that one black person represents all black people, right? And we're so terrified because we don't have control of our own image in media. So we're so terrified that one black person gonna make other black people look bad because every other group controls their image, right? You saw how the Mexicans made Tiger take that music video down. They got on Tiger's head about that. And even though they not big in rap, they not big in music, he was so worried about what was going to happen to him in the real world. He took that music video down. He didn't just, edit it a little bit. He didn't go on social media and yell back and forth with them people. he took that music video down because of how upset they were about that music video. So, you know, because we don't control our own image, then we just worried about how we look. So because we can control that, we try to separate ourselves from everybody. Because I don't want to be compared to those other people. Those idiots in O Block, that don't have nothing to do with me. That's them. That's not me. So I don't worry that what they do and make me look bad. If you can't discern between me and those people, you're an idiot. So that's your fault. And I'm not talking about UGC. I'm just saying in general. Jonathan, man, I appreciate the $5. Big up to you, Justin Henry. You got a group of blacks down in Miami. I used to be with some black people over there in Carroll City. So that's a good deal. Do y'all thing, man, because I know it's rough in Miami because Cubans got that thing on lock and they pushing a hard line down there, which is what they supposed to be doing. But yeah, they got that thing on lock. That's one of the reasons why I don't want to live in Miami, because you got to deal with that, because that's how Orlando's getting now. So I was in Orlando like 2 years ago, and I had to get up and out of there, man, because them Latinos, because where I'm from, we don't even really deal. I'm from a black section of Orlando. Only Latinos I dealt with in South Orlando in one little area. The rest of them is in East Orlando, but they pushing west because white people is pushing them out of their area. So it's getting crazy. Then you got Brazilians and Venezuelans moving into the west side, so they starting to box everybody out. Because Venezuelans that can't afford Miami, they moving to Orlando. Yeah. I seen like 5 minutes of that. You know, when you have to create that type of inflammatory content to get attention, you just do it. So, you know, one thing about black folks is we learned a long time ago, if I am provocative, it gets attention. It don't matter whether or not I'm saying it makes sense. It's just about being provocative. And we create a lot of platforms in which, you know, we just yell and scream and argue with each other, right? And that's the only way I can get attention, right? So this is why if we do a platform and we just talk about economics, nobody watches it. Why? Because that's not entertaining to me. I want to see black men and black women argue with each other. Because after all of that, what was the solution? Don't have one. Just tune back in next week for the next argument. So this woman, who I've known on social media for a very long time, she finally got a shtick. And a shtick is an entertainment term, which means like, what's your angle? The shtick that finally works for her is to talk negative about black men. She tried everything else, because at one time she was pro-black man, but that didn't work for her. So what finally worked for her is to talk negative about black men, because why? So many black people have been conditioned to hate each other. They actually hate each other. So there's a big market for that, right? You can polarize people, create the extremes, yada, yada, yada. And that's working for her, because when you can create that kind of content and then get put on Fox Soul, it means that it works. You can't get on Fox Soul and start talking about black economics or black people in real estate. So one of the reasons why I'm never going to talk down on EYL is because no other platform black people actually doing legitimate business. So we can talk down on EYL and say, well, they had this person on, we had, well, EYL has on legitimate black folks that are doing legitimate business. No other platform, conservative or liberal, would platform these black folks. Nobody would. Because they've built their platforms off anti-blackness, whether they're conservative or liberal. So Fox Soul is more on the liberal side, even though it's Fox News. Then you got the conservative, but they build their whole platforms on derogatory perception of black people. Negroes yelling and screaming at black folks. When they get around white folks, they get real soft. But when they get around black people, they got to yell and scream. So Cynthia G just figured out what worked, right? It's an entertainment. We call it a shtick. Once you get a shtick that works, you just run with it. And that's what she's doing right now, right? She figured it out, because everything she tried before then didn't work. Yeah. Two big Hispanic drug. It was the Flores brothers. That was the Flores brothers. Flores brothers was getting all their dope from El Chapo. Then they turned around and testified against him with the DEA. That's how that worked. Right? But you won't find a Mexican person to say, well, you know what? I don't deal with Mexicans because of the Flores brothers. But they flooded Chicago with cocaine. Not only flooded Chicago with cocaine, they flooded the rest of the country with cocaine. But you know, it is what it is. That's Sinaloa. So DJ Caddock says, I'm glad you got on the Greeks. I don't have no issues with the Greeks, but my set is that we don't have groups that are about those particular things. I don't have no issues with them. My small business attorney in Atlanta was in the Boule. I got people from my neighborhood that's in the Boule. So I don't have an issue with them. But my thing is that we don't have groups that are about getting power. We create these segmented groups. It is not about getting power around jobs, resources, housing, things of that nature. The black people that are doing that are not in any of those groups. To me, those groups are more social than anything else. No disrespect to them, because there's people in those groups that are solid people. Like I said, my small business attorney in Atlanta was a member of the Boule. But I dealt with her as an individual. I didn't deal with her as a member of that group. But she's loyal to that group. That's her thing. But I'm not confused as to the lack of power those groups have. It's just not. Because when I need to get housing in Atlanta, I don't have to deal with none of those groups. Right? They just don't. When I need to get permits and things in Atlanta, I don't have to deal with none of those groups. I don't have to go through them to get it. Okay, so Justin Henry says you live in Brickell, Little Havana Edge. Yeah, Cuba's got on lock. They got the whole city on lock. In fact, they got all of Dade County on lock. I speak the language, so I notice my treatment is different. Definitely. Once they learn you can speak what they saying, they're going to deal with you different. Because I speak a little bit of Espanol. And once they realize I'm picking up on what they're saying, all of a sudden you get a different type of treatment because they realize they can't just say what they want to say around you. Yeah. Well, I know about the Patel. So Geechee Dan says how the East Indians move when they get here. They rule out a motel. Yeah, in the Southeast, the Patels got the hotel game on lock, especially if you go to Orlando. It's on a whole nother level. Pretty much Florida. The Patel's real big in the hotel business. And I ain't mad at them. That's what they're supposed to do. And India got a lot of issues, but they don't come over here and start talking about how they don't like India. You don't see no Indians coming to America saying, oh, man, I can't stand the caste system, man. I ain't going to deal with no more Indians. Come on, man. They could be at the bottom of the caste system. They ain't going to do that. They're going to come over here and get with some more Indians. So LG Ghost says, I hear the test for U.S. citizenship is in Spanish. It could be. I don't know. It could be. That's crazy if it is, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, what is not in Spanish now? America doesn't do language supremacy, which is unfortunate. It was done to us, but it's not being done to anybody else. That's very unfortunate. Right? It's very unfortunate that we don't do that. And I believe that we should do that. We should do language supremacy. You shouldn't be able to speak but one language in this country. So Mr. Russell says, May the Daily was a lightning rod for the race ride in 1919 Chicago. Part of the crew that caused the death of the young brother student at the South Shore, which precipitated the ride. I feel you. I ain't know about that. That's big. That's serious issues. Yeah, part of Irish. Yeah. He definitely was a gang member. Now I don't know if he was a gang member when he was a mayor, but he is a former gang member. That's a fact. That is a fact. GC says he got the President USA son doing crack on video, and they talking about black folks' image. Yeah, you know how I go. And don't no white person feel like that dude doing crack and tricking off like that is a reflection on them. Don't know, because they know they not judged by the worst members of their group. Only black people are judged that way. Mexicans not judged by the worst people of their group. Only black people are. So the president's son doing crack and tricking a hole in the ozone layer, and it's all good. It's all good because they not judged by that. So King Tall says California was all to Upper California under Mexico. Yeah, see what I'm saying? Yeah, Mexican, they took it from. They gave him 30 million, which we know now is cheap. That was nothing for Cali. All that good agricultural land out there, that was nothing. They gave California away, but they couldn't hold it anyway because the U.S. military was going to take it from them. So they figured they might as well get something for it instead of losing and get nothing. So I understand the deal. So Good Time says Ronald Reagan and Nixon brought in black capitalism. So what black capitalism did they bring in? What black capitalism did they actually bring in? What was actually implemented from a black capitalist standpoint? Because I came up in the 80s. I don't know what programs Reagan had, right? I don't know what programs Reagan had in the 80s. I wasn't around when Nixon was president, though, so I wouldn't know. Appreciate it, D-Feld. I appreciate the super chat. And just keep doing everything you're doing. Blind guy, his wife, their life. So in a solution-based way. So I don't know if you watched the whole video. And I don't know if you're a subscriber to the actual channel because we talk about solutions all the time. So one of the things I did when I realized I couldn't find people that did what I did, I said, how can I produce those type of people? So as opposed to me arguing on YouTube with what black people need to do, and me getting mad because black people are not doing what I need them to do or what I think they should be doing, I figured out how can I produce the kind of people that are going to be doing what I think that they should be doing, right? So I got consumed with the production of groups of people as opposed to arguing over whether or not, because ain't nobody going to tell me what I believe we should be doing because I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just going to go do it, right? But I have a different mentality than a lot of people, right? So I would encourage you, if you can't find the kind of people that you think black people should be doing, how can you go about building that group of people? And to just go do it and stop arguing with people because it ain't nothing to argue about. Because the people that's doing the most arguing, that's really how they make their money. They don't make their money doing anything else. Okay, so that's pretty much going to be the super chat. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Let me ask you. So I don't know what he didn't ever respond back. So he says I'm not going to assume I knew what he was trying to say. So I didn't see any black capitalism programs that came out of Reagan. So I'm just going based on what he said, not what I think he said. So Kevin Theodore, Mr. Theodore says the mayor of New York City is an African-American. He's doing enough to build an economic empowerment for African-Americans. In New York City, he has a tight group of African-Americans, but it's created nothing for the community. So Mr. Theodore, would ask ourselves is what group of African-Americans, right, can influence him to do something? So if his group isn't about that, and a lot of African-American groups are not about that, right? Because half of what people are promoting on YouTube with their little group is not economic empowerment. So if they was to get into a position of power, then they wouldn't pursue that, right? So then the question is, what other groups, right, can influence him through their power to make him do that? Because every black person doesn't believe in economic empowerment. They just don't, right? I don't assume that when I meet them that that's what they're about, right? Everybody's not about what I'm about. You got some people that's in direct opposition to what I'm about. That's cool. That's life, you know? So I don't assume that. So my question is, if I got a group and that's what we want, how can we influence them? I don't believe that just because somebody's black, they want what I want. We talked about with Mexicans. You got some Mexicans that just want to distribute cocaine. That's all they want to do with their life. You got other Mexicans that's very productive, right? They want to build successful businesses. You got other Mexicans to where they cool with working in the fields, right? You got other Mexicans that fix cars. I don't assume that everybody wants the same thing. So I appreciate the super chats. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Talk to y'all later, but I want to really encourage you to make sure that you do something productive with your time as we get ready to go into this new year. All right, talk to y'all later.